In the recent, the Sri Lanka series, I have seen two Sri Lankan batters actually came up to you and were having a chat with you. One of them actually is performing pretty well, not giving you the credit for that. But I'm just saying, so when people approach you and probably ask you about how to go about playing the game or something of that sort, how do you handle that? What do you tell them? Because, as you said, now the game is a lot more evolved and a lot different.
Well, I very rarely get into the technical aspect because every player has a very different technique, and we are, as players, we are pretty touchy about our own techniques. I focus more on how do you prepare your innings and in the mental aspect of the sport. Not too much into because as you said, the Sri Lankan players with very less exposure, how do you give them inputs? If someone who's played like 100 games, obviously they have the experience of the 100 games, and you're able to give them very simple techniques or simple pointers and they're able to absorb it. But someone who's played this 30 games, the experience and exposure is very less. So what sort of pointers are you going to give them? You try to keep it very, very minimal and simple for them to understand. And if it is during the tournament that you want certain things to change, then you don't feed them too much of information. Keep it very minimal and see if they're able to do that. And if it works for them, I think it is great because you feel nice when players perform, when they're trying to get off those slow faces. If you're able to help them, I think in that sense, my experience comes to the foray. Yeah.
Again, now I'll again get back to commentary. So generally people think that commentary is all about just talking on the game. But what does the prep look like, say for example, a pitch report prep in Hindi?
Well, I'm sure a lot of people have, enjoy me talking in Hindi and giving a pitch report in Hindi. And most of them said that, I've really improved since the first time that they heard me speak in Hindi. When I moved from a player to a commentator, like everybody else, I thought it is a pretty easy job. You just have to commentate on the sport that you've played for so many years. But then, doing it live and then in few seconds to express your thoughts over the action, it is challenging for any cricketer to, sit on that chair and talk. It took me a while to grasp things, how to be done, and looking at the seniors also in the commentary box who've done it before, giving me certain advices, and I was speaking a little bit along with them. So, but then for women's cricket, I think it does help when you know the players and you've been following them, you've played with them, so you know a lot more than the cricket that they're playing. So you can add that a little bit and make it more entertaining for the viewers.
What about the names? Remembering so many names, is it a trouble?
Well, it is, because I'll tell you honestly, when you lead for 17 years, and that happens to be about 3-4 generations, and you can understand how many players I've come across in the domestic and international level. So it's human tendency that you don't remember many of the names. But yes, I'm working on it, and I'm sure that I'll improve even there.
But when you talk about social media of course has a lot to talk about your game still. Say for example, the strike rate factor. And also when you commentate then, they have a lot to talk about and a lot of feedback to give. Do you go on Twitter to check those comments? What are your reactions to that?
Well, now that I have time, I do go on social media. Not every day because I don't want to get addicted to it. But then it's always good to read what people say about what you're doing, your profession, because some do give very important feedback. And some it is just for the sake of criticizing they do. So I'm able to filter that. But at times, yes, when you're trying very hard, you're doing your homework, and there are days when it is pretty tough in the office. And when you come across a feedback that, things were not really good, it does sort of, it makes me feel sad. But again, you tend to take that in your stride to better yourself. But then yes, I feel that from the first time that I was behind the commentary mic to today, if you ask me, I've grown a lot in confidence. The first year I thought I'm not made for commentary. I literally wanted to tell them that don't come back to me. I don't want to do commentary. I would rather get into some other field. But I gave myself a few more months, in fact, to put in the hard work that I did as an athlete, you know, behind every innings or a tournament, the way I prepare. I thought I should put the same discipline into this as well and see if it really works. And it did, so I'm building on that.
Fantastic. But now I'll go to the third role, which is administrator. You are, of course, with the Andhra Cricket Association, and Andhra has performed well across all the tournaments. But before that, I would say that when you took up the administration role, is it a way of giving back to the game?
I think so, yes, in a way, because over the years, when you ask me about my journey, I've seen so many administrations, people, they were very genuine people who wanted to, you know, see a structure built for women's cricket. And we didn't have earlier in the 90s, there was absolutely no pathway how to go about if someone is interested or want to play higher level. But if you have a proper, meaningful pathway, I think it makes sense for young girls also to know how do they climb the ranks to wear an India jersey or get into a WPL team, even for the coaches or for the parents as well. So when I got this opportunity to get into administration through Andhra Cricket Association, I thought it is also that, you know, I'm able to get my experience to the table and see how I could, you know, get more girls into the foray, and so far Andhra Cricket Association has been doing well in the domestic season.
You know, when we were there in Vizag for the World Cup games, Snehashish and I were talking to some of the net bowlers who were your under-19 girls. There were a few of them. And I asked them, did Mithali Raj come and speak to you, you know? And she said something nice. One of the girls said that, you know, the first meeting that we had with ma'am came and told us, whatever you girls need, we are here for you. So as an administrator, you know, what kind of environment do you want to create that, you know, you feel probably you did not get back when you were a cricketer?
I think as an administrator, the players need to feel that, you know, they can approach us, which I felt was missing way back, not now, but perhaps early in my journey. Like it was very difficult to reach out to an administrator if there was any issues that the players felt, or as a team we required more resources or more camps. We didn't know how to go about it, and I was coming from there, that, you know, as players, if they really need something which can elevate their skill level, which can give them more confidence in their preparation, they should be able to confidently reach out. And being a former player myself, you know, I want to be more approachable to them. And then I think the first time, you know, the first assignment I did as an administrator is to meet the under-15 girls. Because when you play at the highest level for the longest time, you're only access to the senior players. And you don't really know the grassroots levels, how the under-15s, under-16 girls are, or what sort of training they do, and what are their requirements. And so I made it a point that I have to go and meet these young girls, and it was such a refreshing, you know, way of meeting them, is because they were not afraid that, you know, they are meeting me, which usually is the case when I meet the senior players. You know, you walk into a room and then they all go silent. But the under-16, under-15 girls were so chatty. Each one of them has asked me questions, and I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation with them, because it not only took me way back into my journey where I was a young 15, 16-year-old, but also they've challenged my thought process and, you know, questioning me, perhaps sometimes more profound questions coming in, and there are times when it could be silly, but it is, you know, I could just drop my guard and be like them. And for the, it's been a long time that I have not really interacted with youngsters. So that was a really nice interaction with these girls. And when I saw them play on the field, a couple of games, I felt they had so much of potential. Perhaps when I was 16, probably half of what they have, the potential, I had. But how do I build on that? What sort of training, what sort of diet should, as an administrator, that I should be able to cater to them, that they have that growth from 16 to 19, 19 to 23, just like how the boys have, how it is in men's cricket. I would like to have similar structure for the girls, and I would like to start from ACA, yeah.
A lot of people say whether, we get a lot of questions when Ashish and I do shows. Have you guys met Mithali Raj? Is she humble? Is she arrogant? There are so many questions. She just said, I was not as talented, when I was 16. 16 years, 205 days, she had an international century on debut. And of course, she was not talented enough. But Mithali, again, if I ask you as an administrator, if you look at where the grassroots level is, what do you think needs immediate attention? Or what do you think is where women's cricket is probably still lacking? And I'm sure there are a number of steps. But if there is something immediate that we need to look into, if you have made a pointer, reveal it.
Well, I feel that the 16 and 19-year-olds should be playing more games, which I guess in domestic structure, it is very similar to the seniors that they play the one day and the T20 format. I would love some days game there, because as young kids, if you're playing a lot more, and it helps in your exposure, because that's what I get to hear with the boys when they are under 14 years or under 16, they have those 2-day games and 3-day games. So even if we are not playing test match that often, I think at least for that age group level, you need to have some red ball cricket, because it makes your fundamentals more stronger, and it only will help even for the India as well, that you have good potential players coming through the ranks, more strong in their technique. Like we speak so much about Pratika Rawal, who's just been here. I mean, when she broke into the Indian team, her technique to watch her play and get those runs through a very conventional, way of getting those runs in the one-day format was quite refreshing, because everybody feels that you need to go the aerial route and have the strike rate, as you said. But with a decent strike rate, she is, scoring a lot of runs and being consistent. So, you need to have that sort of a technique, which will perhaps also help in the white ball cricket, and the way you want to play with 130 strike rate as well. You don't really have to have fancy strokes to develop to reach up to that strike rate level. So yes, that's something I truly believe, that the age group girls need to have more games.
Last 3 questions from me and 3 quick answers. So when the story of Indian women's cricket is narrated, say 20, 30 years from now, what do you want Mithali Raj to be known as? Like known for?
If I honestly say, I have no answer to this. Perhaps maybe a resilient player.
As a kid growing up, I was a pace bowler, and my dream was always to get her wicket. That silence, that no answer is my little bit of joy, But one more thing. Okay, so a captain's armband, the commentator's mic, the administrator's desk, or a floppy hat and a bat. Which one is most like home?
I think a floppy hat and a bat.
Absolutely. But the last one, in commentary a number of times, you've gotten your stats wrong. And this is a question that we have got n number of times in Twitter, in our lives. Are you that bad with your stats, or are you just pretending?
I was bad in math. I hated numbers. I somehow got through my 10th, and I told my father, never put me into those subjects which had numbers. Eventually, I got into a sport which is full of numbers, and that is why I find it difficult to remember my stats. When you have people like Trisha, you just have to ping her and ask her what is my stats, how many runs have I scored, and people like you are there, no, to remind us about the numbers.
Absolutely. Somebody had asked her, I think Deep Das Gupta had asked her how many runs she had scored. She nonchalantly said, I've scored, I think, 7,000 runs. It is 7,805, Mithali. That too only in ODIs.
I said 7,000 plus. So you
7,000 plus can be anything. But that's it. That's Mithali Raj for you. I would call Boria Majumdar on stage. A round of applause for Mithali Raj.
Thank you.